Buddhism is revered as the middle path through which nirvana can be achieved without gender discrimination. However, society at the initial onset of Buddhism was highly influenced by the Hindu caste system. Thus, Buddhism itself was tinted with implicit discrimination and stereotypes against women. Paradoxically, women were despised because of their lustful natures and also praised because of their motherly skills. Despite the emphasis on women as subordinate to men, the Buddha eventually allowed women to become nuns or bhikshunis. He offered them an environment that was gender-free, where they could become an asexual and rational being, ultimately attaining nirvana. Yet through time, Buddhism has come to gradually suppress bhikshunis. Nowadays, many women struggle to become ordained when Theravada Buddhism refuses to ordain them. Theoretically, egalitarianism is supposed to provide both women and men the opportunity to reach nirvana. But practically, Buddhism has begun to institutionally suppress women, ideally putting nirvana out of reach for many of them. Initially, women were regarded as objects of sexual desire and a hindrance to the celibate path of monks. This notion of women as lustful creatures is carried over from the Hindu traditions and incorporated into Buddhism. The Pali Canon even advocates that monks should avoid women at all costs, since sexual desire is a biological and social instinct that ties men and women to the world. Celibacy safeguards monks from matrimony and reproduction. The demonology of women enabled some monks meditative means to overcome their lusts by concentrating on the repulsiveness of the female body. Sometimes, to induce a proper state of detachment, monks would meditate on the female body as a decaying corpse. By inheriting many ideas about the female gender from Hindu tradition, women were easily associated with evil gods. Women could be represented as evil, particularly because of their potential for seducing men and leading them from their path of virtue. Just as Parvati tempted Shiva, while he was meditating, Mara tried to tempt the meditating Buddha with his 3 daughters, Ragna, Arati, and Trishna. These daughters are the personifications of lust, aversion, and craving. The demonology of females in a patriarchal caste society portrayed women as evil because they were seen as a vehicle to the perpetuation of life on earth and endless suffering. However, Buddha taught that women as wives and mothers should be treated with the utmost respect. As in his teachings, the Sigala Sutta, one must worship the 6 cardinals of the heavens, which are east, west, north, south, nadir, and zenith. In the Buddha's noble discipline, the eastern direction pertains to the worship of one's parents. One is supposed to honor, respect, and worship one's parents every day, morning and evening. Parents are revered as sacred to the child. Women as mothers are seen as equally sacred as fathers. The western direction pertains to the worship of one's wife. The relationship and love between a husband and wife is considered religious and sacred. A wife and husband should both be faithful, respectful, and devoted to each other. Due to the insistence of his stepmother, Mahaprajapati, and his assistant Ananda, Buddha established the Bhikshuni Sangha for women. It is believed that Ananda requested 3 times for Buddha, on the behalf of female lay followers, for Buddha to allow women to become nuns. Buddha was initially hesitant to allow women to become nuns because of women's roles in procreating and maintaining a household. Additionally, he was afraid that women's ascetics could engender monks into breaking their vows of celibacy. Yet he consented to the ordination of nuns on the condition that they adhere to the 8 Garu Dharmas, or vows of respect. These vows of respect are as follows. By accepting the vow to become a nun, she must honor every monk as her senior, even if she has been a nun for 100 years and he only a day. During the rains, she cannot reside in a district where there are no monks. The nuns have to schedule their observance day in line with the monks. A nun has to invite criticism at the end of the rains from both the nuns and monks, even though she cannot criticize monks. A nun must undergo penance for a serious offense from both assemblies. Nun novices must undergo a 2-year trial period and then seek ordination from both assemblies. A nun cannot verbally abuse a monk. Finally, nuns cannot reprove monks. Nuns must also follow 311 rules, whereas monks only follow 227. Buddha did try to redress inequality by forbidding monks to abuse nuns. While in the Bhikshuni Sangha, monks are forbidden to request that nuns habitually perform tasks for them. Additionally, nuns can also publicly boycott monks who treat them badly. The ordination of a nun is more complicated than a monk's ordination. A nun can enter the Buddhist order at the age of 8. The candidate for ordination has to undergo a 2-year period of probation. In these 2 years, a nun has to study and be trained in the 6 rules. The 6 rules consist of the 5 precepts and refraining from eating outside of the mourning period. While on probation, a nun can still stay with her family. Yet she cannot violate any rules if she wishes to be ordained as a nun in the Bhikshuni Sangha, and if she does, she will have to begin anew. After a successful 2 years on probation, a woman must choose a preceptor that has been a Bhikshuni for at least 12 years. The candidate for the Bhikshuni Sangha is then ordained by 5 Bhikshunis. This long process of ordination ensures that there are less numbers of nuns than monks. Many women chose to become nuns because lay life was no longer satisfactory. Additionally, many women were poor, unsuccessful, unmarried, or widowed. The fundamental idea of Mahayana Buddhism is that differences between men and women is relative, not absolute. With the ordination of nuns, Buddha taught that there is no distinction between a woman and a man in her quest or his quest for nirvana. This is evident in the Buddha's teachings and one's understanding of the concepts of Sunata, Advaita, and Samatha. Since humans often cling to the belief of an Atman or existence of the self, they are caught in a cycle of dualistic and discriminatory thoughts. Humans focus on concepts such as self and others, existence and non-existence, this and that, or man and woman. By focusing on the Atman, one is unable to see the truth of one's own existence. By being caught up in the idea of males and females, one is disillusioned and losing sight of truth. When one realizes that the truth is that there is no truth and sees voidness or sunyata, one will transcend duality and free oneself from attachment from the self and man versus woman. Ultimately, there is no difference between a man and a woman, since the body is just a vehicle towards nirvana. However, after the death of the Buddha in 483 BCE, many schools formed, most notably the Hinayana school, which began to branch away from Buddha's teachings about egalitarianism. Hinayana emerged about 100 years after the Buddha's death, when the Buddhist order underwent a division between 20 schools. This branch tends to be very conservative. The Hinayana Buddhist order began to increasingly discriminate the nuns of the Bhikshuni Sangha. They adopted the 3 types of obedience around the 2nd century. The 3 types of obedience required women to obey her parents in her infancy. Then, after being married, she was to obey her husband. Finally, after reaching old age, she was to obey her children. A woman was not given a chance to mobilize herself with these obediences and was always put under the care of someone other than herself. The Hinayana school also adopted the 5 obstacles. The 5 obstacles believed that a woman could never enter the positions of society that were deemed sacred to men. Firstly, a woman could never become a Brahmin. Secondly, she could not become a Sakra. Thirdly, she could not become a devil king. Fourthly, she could not become a wheel-turning sage king. Lastly, and most importantly, a woman could never become a Buddha. Through these obediences and obstacles, women were systematically banned from ever becoming a part of the Buddhist order in the Theravada world. As Buddhism spread into other parts of the world outside of India, Buddhism also encountered many religions that challenged its view on women. In China, a country highly influenced by its Confucius and patriarchal ideas, only certain aspects of Buddhism which would mobilize those in power were preached. There is a tendency to bend Buddhism to the will of Confucianism by oppressing women. The Buddhist injunction stating that a husband supports his wife became a husband controls his wife, while the wife should comfort her husband shifted to the wife should revere her husband. Moreover, in 1017, the Bhikshuni Sangha ended in Sri Lanka. The end of the Sri Lankan Bhikshuni Sangha signifies the death and the end of the Bhikshuni Sangha till this day in the Theravada world. Since the end of the Bhikshuni Sangha legacy in the Theravada world, gradually the treatment and status of women in the Buddhist world has become more oppressive. Nowadays, women are forced to go to Mahayana countries such as Taiwan to get ordained in order to become a Bhikshuni. In Taiwan, there is approximately 3 times the number of ordained nuns than monks. Moreover, in Taiwan's largest monastery in the south, nuns outnumber monks by 2 to 1. Historically, in Taiwan, one saw monkhood as a low rank, and only those that chose to become monks were poor. This attitude was shaped by Confucianism, since it emphasizes filial piety, and more importantly, it emphasizes that sons must continue the family lineage. Therefore, when Buddhism was introduced to Taiwan, the Buddhist order had to open its doors to women in order to expand.